Welcome to Brady's podcast. Today we will be talking about the NFL playoff hunt, in particular the Dallas at Green Bay matchup. This matchup features two of the most premier offenses in the NFL, with Aaron Rodgers under center for the Packers and that smash-mouth run game headed by DeMarco Murray for the Cowboys. DeMarco has been just incredibly solid for the Cowboys this year, breaking Emmitt Smith's consecutive 100-yard games record, and may prove to be a huge trouble for the 23rd ranked rush defense for the Pack this weekend. At the same time, how could one not point to Aaron Rodgers, the man who has worked wonders this year for the Green Bay offense that seems to be a nightmare for so many this year? Aaron has truly put up potential MVP numbers this year, and I'm sure wouldn't want to cap it off with anything less than a deep playoff run. John, your thoughts?
Both defenses, they'll get after it, but it really gets down to the offenses. Both offenses, they know how to execute. The Cowboys have that run defense. They also have Tony Romo. He's a good quarterback. They have a nice wide receiver core, but then it comes down to Aaron Rodgers. Best in the NFL. He has a great core of nice wide receivers out there. We'll just see who can execute more.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think when you add Eddie Lacy into the mix with Aaron Rodgers and that dynamic receiving core for the Packers, it's just a really tough offense to beat. And I mean, for the Cowboys, you're talking about Tony Romo, who's, I guess, an average quarterback, and Des Bryant, who's an outstanding receiver. It's really going to be a good matchup. One would wonder if the fact that the game is taking place at the frozen tundra could play a factor in the outcome of the game. And I think the answer to this question seems to be nearly impossible to find, with the Cowboys having the best road record in the NFL this year. But at the same time, the Packers have the best home record, sitting at 8-0 at Lambeau this year. The only thing I would have to say about this, if I'm allowed to add my somewhat Packer-biased input, is that the Cowboys, despite having the best road record, haven't played at Lambeau this year, and they don't call it the frozen tundra for nothing. And the temperature for Sunday's game is expected to be around 19 degrees, which could play a monster factor in the outcome of the game, with Dallas traveling all the way from Texas up to the frigid north. And lastly, the infamous calf injury, possibly the most famous calf that has ever been. The calf isn't expected to bother Aaron nearly as much as it did Week 16, with the Packers, specifically Aaron Rodgers, coming off of 2 weeks of rest. And while it may limit the play calling of Green Bay to some extent, with a little less play action and more shotgun and pistol looks, and probably quite a bit more running for the Packers, Rodgers is still expected to be the Packers' go-to guy. John, anything to add?
Well, that calf is really going to get after him, but, maybe after this break he had here for the last 2 weeks, might loosened up a little bit, might have gotten a little better, We'll see. He won't be so mobile in the pocket, but I think he'll still get after it.
Yeah, I agree. With all factors taken into consideration, my prediction for the game on Sunday is Green Bay 34, Dallas 27. Thanks for listening in. Our next matchup will feature Seattle and Carolina. Welcome back to Brady's podcast, where I have with me special guest speaker Isaac Kollock. Care to say hi to the people?
Hello, everyone.
Today we'll be talking about the Carolina at Seattle matchup. In this matchup, the 12-4 Seahawks and their brick wall defense clash with the 7-8-1 Panthers, who to many are surprised to have even made it this far. Both teams are riding hot streaks into this matchup, with the Seahawks coming in on a 6-game win streak and the Panthers nearly matching that with a 5-game win streak of their own. Mid-season for both teams had fans scratching their heads and wonder if their team was even going to be able to make it into the postseason. The Panthers were sitting at 3-8-1 with what appeared to be little chance of making the playoffs. If it weren't for the NFC South's overall weak play this year, I don't think the Panthers even make the playoffs. What are your thoughts on really the weak play in the NFC South and the Panthers being able to make it into the playoffs?
I think that most teams in the NFC South aren't really a competitive group or team in general, so the Panthers being able to make it isn't really a surprise since they were a fan favorite to many.
Yeah, it almost doesn't even seem fair to teams in, say, the NFC North or other divisions because they don't have to play that weak competition and they're playing a tough competitor week in and week out, and that just really makes it more difficult to make the playoffs. The Panthers are actually the second team in NFL history to make the playoffs with a losing record, second to the Seahawks a couple of years ago. Likewise, the Seahawks had their own midseason struggles. However, these struggles all seem to be cured by both the departure of Percy Harvin, which seemed to clear up some beef that was going on in the locker room, and also the return of middle linebacker Bobby Wagner, who helped Seattle allow just 39 points in their last 6 games. Wagner is said by many to be the second best middle linebacker in the game, second to only Luke Kuechly, the other middle linebacker in the game on Saturday. Both linebackers, Kuechly and Wagner, will have their hands full containing the extremely mobile quarterbacks that are Russell Wilson and Cam Newton. You take away the passing lanes, and both quarterbacks are versatile enough to escape the pocket and make plays on their own. I think it's very likely for the Seahawks to take away passing lanes in the first place with their first-ranked secondary in the NFL, headed by all-pro performers Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and Cam Chancellor. Unlike the other NFC playoff games set to take place this weekend, I believe that the location of this game could be a very large factor for the game on Saturday at CenturyLink Field in Seattle, home to the 12th man. This is, hands down, the loudest and most intimidating place to play in the National Football League today. This could play to Seattle's strengths in what I feel will be a 31-14 victory for Seattle. Thanks for listening in. We'll be back after this short break. Could switching to Geico really save you 15% or more on car insurance? Did the little piggy cry wee 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 all the way home? Do woodchucks really chuck wood?
Hey, you dang woodchucks! Quit chucking my wood!
Does Elmer Fudd really have trouble pronouncing the letter R?
Rabbits! Okay, cut. I'm hunting rabbits, Elmer. Let's try that again.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Welcome back to Brady's podcast. Now we will take a look at the AFC side of things with the Baltimore at New England matchup. This game was expected to be a good one, with the top-seeded Patriots at home against the anything but underdog-minded Ravens. The Ravens seem to be this deep in the playoffs every year, so they may have had the upper hand in the experience category, but that didn't seem to faze the very skilled Patriots. The Patriots were actually down by 14 points at 2 separate times during the course of this game, but were able to come back both times and sneak out a victory. Isaac, as an athlete, what is it like to be down by this much, and what does it really take to come back?
I think it takes a lot of heart. It takes a lot from your coaches to keep the morale high, and a lot of people need to understand that it's not just a game to these players, and it's more their job and their life. So if they keep losing games, they might not have a job in the upcoming season.
Taking ball is life to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Just to kind of go to the stats side of things now, if I may. Tom Brady finished the day 33 of 50 with 367 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. However, apart from the trick play in which Julian Edelman, a college quarterback turned wide receiver, threw a touchdown pass to Danny Amendola, the Pats didn't really seem to have anything else going for them, with just 13 yards rushing. The Ravens, on the other hand, played with a bit of a more balanced attack. Justin Forsett led the rushing attack for Baltimore with 129 hard-fought yards on the ground. But that's not where the offense stops. Joe Flacco, who every year seems to fly under the radar during the regular season until the postseason arrives, was able to contribute 292 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. These interceptions seemed to pay too costly for the Ravens to overcome in the end. The Ravens have had a great ride, a bumpy ride at times with all the drama surrounding Ray Rice and the elevator incident, but guys such as Justin Forsett, who by the way played phenomenal down the stretch, were able to step up to the occasion and make the best of the situation. John, just give us a take, if you would, on the whole Ray Rice situation.
I think it's awful as how big he is. in the NFL and how many people look up to him. It's just awful he do such a terrible thing. He has so many young eyes looking at him as a role model. I would just think as a player he would understand that he's such a famous icon that he would understand that it's going to hurt people and if something happens like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong for anyone to do it, and I think it's even more wrong for someone with everyone having their eyes on him, and it's really just awful. As for the Patriots, it's a survive and advance mindset, and that's exactly what they did. Survive the Ravens and advance to their upcoming matchup with the Indianapolis Colts, who defeated the Broncos. We will review this matchup as soon as we return from this short break. Now moving on to the Indianapolis at Denver matchup from this previous weekend. In looking for a headline for this game, one wouldn't have to look much further than the elite quarterbacks that are Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning. In this particular matchup, neither of the two quarterbacks necessarily played to their full potential. Both struggled throughout the course of the game. However, Andrew Luck's squad, the Colts, were able to come out with a W. As a result, Peyton Manning fell short and completed his 9th career one-and-done in the playoffs since coming into the league in 1998. Peyton couldn't get it done against his former team, the Colts, and the still young Andrew Luck continues to build on his already impressive career. Despite the big news of the Broncos falling to the Colts, the majority of the news in Denver came after the game on Sunday. The news that Peyton Manning had just played their game against the Colts with a torn right quad surfaced the day after, on Monday. What do you think, Isaac? With all these significant injuries Peyton has had, the neck a few years ago and now his quad, do you think it's time for him to hang it up?
I do believe that he is getting older as an athlete. Given the fact that he has been very successful with the Broncos the past 2 years, I don't know if they might have a better quarterback, but considering his age, he's going to be very more injury prone when it comes to the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point about being injury prone. Not sure if the Broncos really want to deal with all his injuries anymore. Other big news that came in Denver following the loss was the firing of Coach John Fox. Fox has been just stellar for the Broncos during the regular season, but come postseason, he doesn't seem to have the tools to get it done. As for the Colts, they live to see another day with their 24-13 victory over Denver this past Sunday. It may not have been pretty at times, but a victory is a victory, and I'm sure they'll take it. They move on to face the Patriots in the AFC Championship, which should be yet another great game featuring two of the league's premier quarterbacks. This has been Brady's podcast. Thanks for listening in. Hope to see you next week. Music for today's podcast brought to you by PremiumBeat.com. Premium Beat is the leader in high-quality free music for new and traditional media. Stats for today's podcast provided by ESPN, your worldwide leader in sports. Check in daily for brand new live episodes of SportsCenter or download the free SportsCenter app today. Any questions, complaints, or requests for Brady's podcast can be emailed to bradyb@podcasting.net. Till next week, this is Brady Baltus checking out. Have yourself a great day.